With riots and protests occurring all over America after protests in Hyde Park, London, with actor John Boyega risking his livelihood to make a statement, and of course with it all being sparked off with the murder of George Floyd by members of the American police force, who have now been charged with second-degree murder and aiding and abetting, I wanted to speak about something niche within this global event: racism in the Bengali community. Last week, a post was being shared by many British Bangladeshi influencers. It looked like this. I then saw many people from the Asian community raising points about racism found within our own community towards the black community, and it really got me thinking, are Bengalis racist? Are they still racist? How racist are they? What kind of racism do they show? Now, I can't even answer all of these questions, but as a British Bangladeshi individual, one born in this country but born from a rural Bangladeshi family, I can't be ignorant of this situation. And if I want to solve racism in America and in the world, well, I've got to start locally and start within my own culture. And as a disclaimer, I'm not saying all Bengalis are racist or that this is an issue existing in every single Bengali family, but I do know there is an issue of inherent racism and unconscious racism rooted within the wiring of many Bengali people. So I got in touch with the creator of this post and asked him for his views. He said the following: racism is prevalent across our community, whether those who commit it are conscious of it or not. Many are not conscious of it, and there lies a huge problem. Because if you aren't aware of a problem, then you can't tackle it. Many of us don't even think we can be racist because we're people of colour ourselves, but we most definitely can be. In the US, where these riots are happening, Bangladeshi people have benefited years from both white privilege and black movement. I'm not saying we've not been victims, because we all have and continue to be. However, our passiveness has given us a step on the ladder by being subservient to our past colonial masters. We worship white people because of how they made us feel psychologically during the British Empire, and psychological damage can be inherited and has been. And while we've kissed the hand that feeds us, we've benefited from the rights that black civil rights leaders have earned us while sitting back. We may not bite the hand that feeds us, but we need to acknowledge how filthy that hand is. I hate to bring up interracial marriage. It's the go-to marker for many when discussing how racist we apparently are, but it's just a scratch on the surface. When we do eventually have people marry black people, it doesn't fix the problem. The family remains racist but just becomes more tolerant at best. The problem remains. It goes deeper. Look at the language. We refer to light-skinned people as clean and saf, and the dark-skinned people as dirty or moila. Because of our worship, yes, worship of white people, we buy into the black people are thugs and criminals, when you have to just look at our own kids in Brick Lane and New Jersey. They are thugs and criminals too. We tell our kids to avoid getting into the sun because they'll go black. My Islamic teacher is black, and I feel God made it that way, so some of my family are forced to face their prejudices. The issue is deep, my brother. I honestly don't know what the solution is. I'd be lying if I was to be positive and give some rhetoric about a change is going to come. It has to be diluted as generations come and go, and depends on education of our current generation and that of my kids. Don't get me wrong, I'm positive that it will, but when? I don't know. It will need to change universally before it trickles down to our people, and for that it will take real empathy for white people, and I don't believe people can have genuine tangible empathy, as it will never affect them. But as for our people, when we suffer racism, we either isolate the incidents or go to the extreme of just shutting off. Our families suffered in the UK greatly when we first came. Some assimilated to the point of losing their identity, and others cut themselves from the wider society and kept themselves to themselves and not let their children experience diversity of society. Now, all of this was an opinion from the brother that created this post, but I definitely agree with many things that he's mentioned. And let's talk about the last thing he just said, which was parents stopping their children from actually experiencing the diversity of the society that they're living in today. Now, this is something that I actually spoke about a while back in one of my own podcasts, so I'm going to quickly show you that clip. My dad migrated here in the 1990s. When he migrated here, he's never seen a black person in his entire life. In fact, he's probably never seen a white person or a black person in his entire life from back home. So we never have had that there. So he's coming into this country, which is a lot more diverse. He's seeing people from different countries and nationalities. His first time seeing it. Him having nothing, no experience, and meeting a black or white person, and then having a negative experience whether that is because he's being racially abused by them or he's being bullied by them. Because back in the 1990s, I used to live in Plaistow, and we had loads of gangs. And we grew up in a gang-filled area. That was back then. So the roads were very dangerous. So my dad was in a position where he'd see them, he'd have occurrences with them. What kind of impression he's going to get of a certain race, not having no idea of what they or how they are like and how they react. And it's a very... Unfortunately, a lot of people might look at it and think, oh, but that's not everyone. And it's true, it's not everyone. But now, as a man that's traveled hundreds of miles across to come to a country and is raising a kid, what is he going to say to the kid to protect him? And he's going to say, oh, okay, son, look, be careful of certain people. Be careful of certain people because I'm being attacked.
Yeah.
You be careful because I don't want you to fall into that bracket and you get attacked as well. That's a parent saying that. Now, that's not encourage. I mean, maybe that could, to us looking back in hindsight, you could be thinking, is he encouraging racism? Or is it just he's never experienced anything like that? However, we also had a Nigerian next door neighbor, and that family was such a lovely family where my dad started looking after their kids, picking them up from school. They used to pick us up from school. We used to share food. We experienced each other's cultures, and then now my dad from then my dad had a balanced view, and then he started understanding, okay, cool, there's some really amazing people in the world and there's some really bad people in the world. Maybe it's nothing to do with race at all.
100%.
Right? And it's not that he ever targeted race, but it was just the first thing he's ever experienced from a particular looking person, black or white. And that's what all he's got to feed from. And is that the case with today's form of racism? Is it that when you step out of London and you go to the countryside, or you go up north somewhere or down south, wherever you go, and it's a white-filled community, is it that they really hate Muslims, or they really hate Asian people or black people, and they really, don't like Raheem Sterling, or they whatever it is that they have as a view? Is it that, or is it because they genuinely have no clue what it's like to actually be around coloured people, black, white, I don't know if colour is the right term for it, but black, white, Asian people, whatever kind of people, and they haven't actually experienced enough love from each other? So as you can see from this video and the story of my dad and his experiences of being both racially abused and also experiencing good racial diversity and good experiences from a Nigerian black family, we can actually get a better understanding of any community if we experience the goodness of each of these communities. So as a parent and as a Bengali or a British Bangladeshi person living in this country today, do not neglect people from experiencing black people's cultures and black people's experiences and actually just gelling and speaking to them and getting along with them. What tends to happen is we keep ourselves to ourselves, and just as the brother mentioned, we isolate ourselves from other communities, which can further on the inherent racism that we actually have within us today. Now, I keep saying we like I'm talking about myself, but we have to actually acknowledge that there is a subconscious or an unconscious racism that exists, not by our fault and not by our design, but actually by being raised in this society. If the system that we've been growing up in and nurtured in is a system that is inherently racist towards black people, even if it is unconsciously racist towards black people, if the system is designed to handicap and disadvantage black people and to look at them in a certain way, then growing up every single child will mirror that. And how do we know that as well? When you even look at society and the media and the way that pale complexion is portrayed in the Asian community, you have Bollywood stars that are, showcasing and promoting adverts for products of skin whitening. Now hold on, if your mother is constantly watching Star Plus and constantly watching Bollywood, and then they're fed adverts that are skin whitening products or shown actors and actresses with pale complexion being the good guys and the darker skin complexion being the bad guys, then please tell me how your parents have not been brainwashed already by this inherent racism, by their parents, by the media, by everyone around them. And then what happens? They then tell their kids and they teach their kids. And I know this is prevalent in the Bengali community, because even when you're getting an arranged marriage, the criteria that some parents will set, saying, yep, this person needs to come from a certain background, this person needs to be tall, this person needs to be fair. Why fair? Because fair means beautiful in their eyes, and that in itself tells you that your parents are inherently racist, and that we need to change this, and we need to shape their mentality to be better than this brainwashed mentality of dark skin is poorer or dark skin is bad. And do you know who I personally hold accountable for these kind of issues? Not just the racists themselves and not just the unconscious racist people, because Well, if you're unconscious, it just means you're negligible towards what's happening and you need to do better, you need to educate yourself. The people that I hold personally accountable are people like us, people that know right from wrong and have a passive attitude. These are the people that are the worst of the people involved in this scenario, because regardless of anything, you are involved, but because of your passive attitude, because of the fact that you do not say anything against what's happening and you do not act on anything that's happening, you promulgate the same effects that your parents have had on to the next generation. So if you're sitting here and thinking, well, this isn't really an Asian fight, this is a black versus white issue, I'll make a couple points. My first being, on the 4th of May 1978, a Bangladeshi migrant called Altab Ali was murdered by white racist kids. They weren't even caught and they were not punished. This sparked mass protests in London. Thousands gathered. And who was walking alongside the outraged Bangladeshi community? The Caribbean black community. That's who. They marched with the Bangladeshi community. So tell me what your passive attitude is about. The bottom line is, black people are handicapped and disadvantaged from the moment they are born into a racist system because of their colour of skin. They are often born into financially handicapped environments. This affects their schooling, their careers, their opportunities, their future. You think you know how that feels because you live in flats in Tower Hamlets? You may be able to relate, but even those Bengali families in the blocks often progress after a generation or two. Black families are still struggling to move forward after several generations simply because the infrastructure and system still keeps them in chains. Now my final point, and one that I believe is equally important, if not more important than the previous points, our Prophet ﷺ in his final sermon specifically highlighted that a white person is not superior to a black, and a black person is not superior to a white. So when you're a leader of a movement and you're giving your final words, you know you're not just addressing the people of the crowd, but the people of the future, to the world. He knew this would be an issue and would continue to be an issue. So what did he do to advise his followers? To understand the racial issues and to understand the equality existing between any race. So please tell me, for those Muslim Bengali families, how much of our beloved Prophet ﷺ's message is actually being followed out? When Islam is championed a religion of justice, how do you call yourself a follower when 1, passively you sit back and let black people suffer, 2, you make it worse with your own inherent racist views without even educating yourselves or wanting to educate yourselves further, or 3, you lecture your children about Islam but then subliminally or actively pass your anti-Islamic and racist thoughts to your children?